Hey gang, Ronan here. Welcome on back to the Retrocade and another episode of WTF Wednesday, the series where we take a bit of a dive into games that on paper seem to be a great idea and in actuality maybe not so much. And for this week, we're going to go back to 1993 and we're actually going to take a look at one of the best-selling educational video games ever made, which is Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. As we get into this, a couple of things, a bit of housekeeping I want to get out of the way. Apologies in advance that we did not have a Sucker Punch Sunday up this weekend. Unfortunately, my work life interfered a little bit. I work in IT and I work alternating weekends, and this one was a bit brutal. Just had a lot of fires to put out, a lot of things to deal with, and while we got Sports Sunday done, or Sports Saturday done rather, we did not get Sucker Punch Sunday in. So what I'm going to do this week is we're going to take Sports Saturday off. We're going to do Sucker Punch Sunday as scheduled. That way it evens the series out at, I believe, 37 episodes, and then normal business will resume hopefully the week after. Again, apologies for that. Wasn't intended, but it's one of those things I have to deal with. So, this game, when it came out in 1985 on computer platforms around the country, it came on the Apple II, the Commodore 64, MS-DOS. It was eventually ported to Windows. It has been released on every major gaming platform released pretty much in the last 30 years. 40 years now, actually. Let me get my math right. And why are we doing this for a WTF Wednesday? Okay. Let's get this out of the way up front. This is not a bad game. This is a game that if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you'll know it well, probably too well, because it was probably the first and only time a video game was allowed to be played in school. At the time in the 80s and the 90s, there was still this very strong movement to get educational video games in schools to get kids engaged in learning, which is not a bad thing. But what they had to do was, while we were at home playing, NES games and rudimentary PC DOS games, they had to come up with something that was going to get our attention. So how this game works is really, really simple. You work as a private investigator for a company that is trying to catch the eponymous thief, Carmen Sandiego, and her henchmen, who are all part of a group called Vile, V-I-L-E. And to do that, you have to go and travel the world, solve clues, find hints, and crack cases that will capture all of her henchmen and then eventually lead to you, in theory, getting Carmen Sandiego. Now, in all the versions of these games that I've played, and there are a great many of them, I would say on average there is the better part of close to 20, if not 30, based on my research alone. If you go to the Wikipedia page for this, you can see all of them. But what we're going to do over the next 25 minutes or so is we're going to do one case to show you how this works. So what we have to do is we have a female suspect reported at the scene of the crime who has stolen the Regent's prized stamp collection. And we've got to track them from San Marino, which is in Italy, to their hideout and arrest her. Now, it was always interesting when we started playing this game that if it was a female suspect, your first thought is, oh, they gave us Carmen Sandiego out the gate. Oh, no. It takes a long time. But you have a deadline of getting this criminal by Sunday at 5 p.m. And if I remember right, we've got about a week. So it's Monday, 9 a.m. So it gives you information about this. And how this game was structured is that it also came with a copy of actual hard copy of an almanac. And if you don't know what an almanac is, if you're not old enough to know what that is, in the days of yore before the internet, if we wanted to be able to look up information, we couldn't go to a computer and get it. What we had to do is we had to go and either grab an encyclopedia, which was a huge, thick doorstop of a tome, of which we had our parents and grandparents had volumes of them, or you went and got an almanac, which was essentially a super thick book of relevant information about everything going on in the world, and they would release them every single year. Then the internet came, and all of that went completely to the wayside, because now you can look at all that stuff up on Google. So, what we need to do is we need to be able to look around, and if you look at the control panel here, the hourglass is obviously to investigate stuff, the plane is to travel, and I believe the computer is to plug in information about your culprit, which allows you, once you get more information and you unlock certain things, you have to get a warrant. And once you get the warrant, then you can go catch your baddie. So in this game, you had 3 places that you can go explore. It wasn't always required to check all of them, but you had to kind of guess where they would go to get whatever information you might need. And the critical info is that, so she's looking for a copy of Anna and the King of Siam. Okay, that's something you want to keep in mind. So you back out of here, go to the next one. A suspicious person was here and said she wanted to search for a lost Siamese temple. She had brown hair. So, we now get a little bit more information. And as you go through the list, you see everybody that is in Vile, with Carmen Sandiego, of course, at the very top. And what you're looking for is you want to see, so Catherine Boom Boom Drib has brunette or brown hair. Lady Agatha has red hair. Dazzle Annie has blonde hair. And Marie LaRocque has brown hair. So, right now, it looks like it could be either Marie LaRocque or Catherine Drib. And what we need to do is, when we plug the info into the warrant, we'll do that. And now we need to figure out where we want to go. So, based on the information you get, you have to determine what your next step is. Now, we can go to Rome, which is in Italy. We can go to Peking, which is in China. We can go to Bangkok, which is in Thailand. Well, all the information that our culprit was looking for is sending them to Southeast Asia, because that's where what was called the Kingdom of Siam is located. So we're going to Bangkok. And it's Monday, 6 p.m. So we've still got like 6 days to be able to lock in our culprit. So we'll go to the foreign ministry, and if you get one of these little animations on the other side with our baddie going by in a balloon, that lets us know we're on the right track. If you go somewhere and you don't get anything, you know you've gone the wrong way. So sources tell me she said she planned to go dancing with the president. Well, the president of what is the issue? Because there are other presidents besides the president of the United States. So now we have to sleep. So many sources tell me she asked many questions about gypsy dialects. Okay. So we may have to go to this last one and see if we can get a little bit more information. Sources tell me she was looking for books on the history of the gypsies. So, we're looking for gypsies and the president. So there's 2 options really that we have, because we came from San Marino, there's Istanbul, and then there's Budapest. My guess is they're going to Budapest because the Central European region for thousands of years was home to what is referred to here as a gypsy culture. I know it's not that way anymore. You have to bear in mind, this game came out in 1985-86. This particular version for the Super Nintendo came out in 1993, so it's 30 years old. So please do not take offense to what is written here or what is stated by the characters in here. A lot's changed in 30 years. This game isn't necessarily aware of all that. So let's take a ride to Budapest and see what we can find out. And in the meantime, this game was developed by Broderbund Software. Broderbund was bought out by a publishing company called Houghton Mifflin Harcourt a couple of years back. And since its release, this game has, in the franchise, has won over 125 awards and accolades. Where in the world did Carmen Sandiego come out in 85, 86? In the first 5 years of its release, it sold 4 million copies. A lot of them went to schools. Because again, this was something that teachers could look at and go, we can get our kids engaged in history and travel and exploring social studies and things like that through a game like this, as opposed to having them sit through boring lectures or old, outdated films or whatever. So let's see if we were right in our assessment. We'll go to the museum. And we were right. As we have a henchman with a sombrero on his head. All I know is that she was interested in the principles of Incan architecture. Okay. But we still don't know specifically who we're dealing with. So it's 6 p.m. Let's go to the Foreign Ministry. We should have enough time to visit there before we have to go to sleep. She invited for a reception to the president. She had her driver along. Okay. I don't know if that's going to help us or not. Feature, lips, ring, tattoo, scar, jewelry. No. Vehicle. Ah, so we can put in limousine. And now we have a warrant for Mary LaRocque. So we've got our warrant. Which means now, when we travel, the Incan Empire was in South America, so that means we are going to Lima, Peru, because it's the only destination on the South American continent. And then you get the little historical tidbit about Peru. And now we can go looking for Marie LaRocque. We haven't caught her yet. But we're getting close. And now that we have the warrant, if we find her, then we can go ahead and arrest her. If we don't have the warrant, we can't. Vacation with a pygmy tribe. She arrived in a private limo. Okay, so we're going to have to check a couple more places. Let's check the marketplace. She was looking to open a tin factory. Okay. Well, check the airport really quick. We're going to sleep till Thursday. Left on a plane with a red, yellow, and green flag on its wing. So it's because you don't always get straightforward clues that the almanac came in handy. So you'd be looking at this point. Every almanac had a section of overhead, every flag of every country in existence at that time. So for this, all you have to do is go flipping through it and go, oh, okay, well, we were looking for a red, yellow, and green flag. So we came from Budapest. We went to Lima. We have Kigali in Africa. And we have London in the UK. Now, if you know your geography at all, and you know your flags at all, the British flag is neither yellow nor green. It's red, white, and blue because it's the Union Jack. We came from Budapest and we're in Lima, so the only option is to go to Kigali. And at this point, we should be pretty close to corralling our culprit here. So Kigali is the capital of Rwanda, which has gone through... Whoop, I don't want to do that. So we go to the bank. Oh, and we've had a dagger or a knife thrown at us. The word is out, you're getting too close, Gumshoe, which means our culprit is here. So she wasn't at the bank, which means she's at the library or the foreign ministry. One of the two. And now we've been shot at. So we've gone to the first two, which means she's in the library. And now the chase is on. And there go the gendarmes after them. And we have caught them. Now the question is, are we right in our warrant? Press any button to continue. The San Marino police have helped apprehend Mary LaRocque. She had the loot, the region's prize stamp collection, which will be returned to the grateful residents of San Marino. We here at Interpol thank you for your good work on the case. Good job. You've now been promoted to sleuth. 4 more cases until your next promotion. So now we get a security code because back then, in the 80s and 90s, before we were really able to save games, we had to have these codes to be able to get back in midstream to a game. So I would have written this down, but instead, we've got about 15 minutes left. So yeah, let's do one more case really fast. See if we can crack this one. Now, because this game was designed for school-age children, they were not made to be so ridiculously hard that you couldn't crack it. All you had to do was really just pay attention to what the clues were, follow along in the almanac, determine what needed to be done, go to the next destination, and you could probably beat this game in a couple of hours. I never remembered how many cases were in each game, because a lot of... I don't know many kids who ever played this game and actually finished it. I myself have played 3 or 4 versions of it, and I've never, ever once beaten it. And again, I've been playing games a long time. So, we have to go retrieve the Statue of Liberty's torch. Because somebody was crazy enough to climb to the top of that statue and saw it out of Lady Liberty's hand. And it was a guy, because of course it was. Only a guy would be stupid enough to try and pull a stunt like that. So they must be apprehended by Sunday 5 p.m. again. So we're starting in the Big Apple. Sources tell me you want to see Yuan Dynasty art. Okay, then that means they're going to China. But let's see if we can get any more actual clues. So the person you're looking for, and he said he needed to buy mercury so he could open a thermometer factory. He said he hated dangerous sports. Okay. So we know it's a male. So he doesn't like mountain climbing, doesn't like skydiving. Alright, we don't necessarily have enough here to know for sure. All we know is that he doesn't do skydiving or mountain climbing. Okay. Now we can go to New Delhi, which is in India. Kathmandu is in Nepal, so it's between India and mainland China. And that could be tempting, but considering what the suspect was looking for in terms of art, that's definitely Chinese. So we'll check the palace and cue the animation. Now, the guy who originally created this game, who came up with the genesis of it, his name is David Siefkin. and he drafted the first script for the game while sitting at a pool at the University of California at Berkeley in 1984. He never actually saw the completion of the game. According to my research on this, he departed the project shortly after writing the first script, went to work for the U.S. State Department as a foreign service officer, and then served as a press and cultural attaché in several countries featured in the game. So he came up with the original kernel of the idea, but then two other programmers, Gene Portwood and Lauren Elliott, with some help from a guy named Dane Bigham, actually created the game. And in all the variations that have come out since, they pretty much followed the same formula because it's been so successful. Why try and reinvent the wheel? I'm sure they've improved on it over the generations of consoles and whatnot, but they didn't need to do too much. So, okay, so they drove off in a vehicle flying the red and white flag. Well, red and white flag can mean a lot of things, but I think I know where they're already going. Because the red and white flag, I believe, is Monaco. So we'll go to the bank, see if we can get any more information. Want to change his money to dollars. Okay, that didn't help me at all. So we'll go to the riverfront. Sources is telling me he left in a canoe flying a maple leaf flag. So he's not going to Monaco. He's going to Canada. So he went from one side of the world, from New York to Peking, and now he's going from Peking to Montreal. But we still have not figured out who the suspect is. All we know is it's a male. And he doesn't like dangerous sports. So Montreal, second largest city in free Canada. Whoop. I didn't want to do that. I want to go looking for where he is. Offered me a ride in his convertible. Okay. Vehicle is a convertible. So it's either Fast Eddie B or Len Bulk. Let's try this. Okay, so. That didn't help. All right, well, we have a warrant for Fast Eddie B, and we're taking a bit of a gamble. But it's based on the idea that if he doesn't like extreme sports, then he likes something a little more gentlemanly. Left in a vehicle flying a green and white flag. Okay, well, we'll check the airport really fast. We're not getting a whole lot of other details in this case. Left in a plane with a green and white flag on the wing. Okay. So it's not China and it's not Japan. Now it could be Moroni or it could be Istanbul, Turkey. And if I remember right, except Turkey doesn't have a green and white flag. They have a red and white flag. So back to Africa we go. And let's see if we're right. So this is the Republic of the Comoros, which I don't believe is around anymore. Well, we were right. The jewelry he wore was stunning. Okay. So we get a little bit more information. Okay, that guarantees we were right. And they're going to Crete. So Crete is near Greece. Kept asking about ancient Sparta. So we know they're going to Greece. Because otherwise we're going to Malaysia / Australia, and that's the wrong way. So we're definitely heading back into the Mediterranean. And it's Friday morning, 10 a.m. Reliable source told me he wants to invest in spices. Okay, well, that could be quite a few places. So he's planning to take a census of wild yaks. Okay, now yaks are Asian animals, which means that we would be going back to India, especially since India was the source of the spice trade. Because we wouldn't be going to Rio, and there are no yaks in Rome. And we get a spinning hatchet thrown at our heads, which means he is definitely here in town. So we'll check the airport and see if we can nab him there. And we have. And the chase is on again. And we got him in a pen. And we got a Bobby to clean up. Although, this is the New York Police Department. I don't think they would be that thorough. We have indeed apprehended Fast Eddie B. He had to loot the Statue of Liberty's torch, which will be a return to the grateful residents of New York. Interpol thanks you for your hard work in the case. Will be noted on the record. 3 more cases until your next promotion. And are we ready for our next case? So I will say no on that, but that, in a nutshell, is Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego for the Super Nintendo from 1993. Now, in terms of a WTF Wednesday feature, the reason why I had is because, is this a game you could make nowadays? Yeah, it's a game they still make. But with the way that genres and different types of games have evolved, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, as the consoles have expanded in terms of power and playability and things like that. Is it a game that if you tried to make it nowadays, could you do that? I don't think you could. And that's not to say that I don't think that it'd be something that would work. I'm saying that it's something that, on the whole, would be really, really difficult for a company to come up with that I think would reach a market the same way this did at the time. You have to remember, back in the 80s, as video games were in their infancy, and there was a bit more freedom to be creative in coming up with games like this. That's not to suggest there isn't now. It was a different playing field. Let me put it to you that way. It was a lot different in terms of what companies were looking for, what different people were looking for, and there was a very large push in the early years following the crash of '83 to develop educational games to go along with your action platformers, your sports games, your adventure titles, your space stuff, your RPGs, all of that. And out of all of those games, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And the Carmen Sandiego series was the one that stood head and shoulders above the rest of the pack because it was not hard to play. The format was really well constructed because, again, you're engaging your students, or as a gamer, you are having to use your brain and use your research ability to help crack the case. Again, the difficulty curve is not hard. This was something that was aimed at elementary school kids. So you had to make it easy enough for them, but also, like, if your parents wanted to play it, they could play it and probably have a little bit of fun with it. Or if you're slightly older and wanted to try it out, you could. Was it going to maintain your attention as long as your typical second, third, fourth, fifth grader? Probably not. But this was a game that if you didn't want your kids to play stuff at the time that may have been considered too mature, too risque, too whatever, and this was pre-ratings board and all that stuff, this was one that you could sit your son or your daughter down, let them play it, and you didn't feel like they were either wasting their time or potentially playing stuff that you may feel bad about later. Which, as a parent, and I'm a parent myself, is still something that's prescient today. We all want to make sure our kids have fun doing stuff, but we don't want to expose them to certain things until they reach a certain age where they can better process it. So, my point being in this is that yes, this is a game, it's a landmark title, it truly is. But it's one that I think if we tried to make it nowadays and put it out on the market, would it have had the impact it did back then? Probably not. And honestly, I don't know if modern gaming companies would have gone into it the way Broderbund did. So it was one of those pure lightning in a bottle moments that they came up with a really simple premise that had a huge impact. And we're still feeling it today. So, the fact that 40 years later now, we're still getting variations of Carmen Sandiego games speaks to the longevity of it. But it is one that if you look back on it, you can scratch your head a little bit and kind of do a little bit of a WTF and go, how did this get from where it started to where it is now? And that was my point in wanting to do this one. So if you've enjoyed it, and I do hope you have, best way you can show it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and ring the bell to be notified of the latest content. Remember, there will be no Sports Saturday this week because we're going to do just a Sucker Punch Sunday to balance them back out, and then normal service will resume, hopefully, as long as my work schedule doesn't get too crazy. I do have to still work for a living. This ain't a paying gig here at the Retro Kid. Until the following week, we will be back up to doing both, hopefully. Also, be sure to vote on our poll question, which is on the community page. Do you want to see me, as we get even closer to 200 episodes on this channel, to commemorate that, dive into the Soulsborne universe and take my first ever crack at Dark Souls Remastered? It'll be the first Soulsborne game I've ever played. As I said, I've seen it. I've seen people play it. I am interested in trying it out. I've never taken that leap. So vote yes or no on the community page. Again, once we hit 200 episodes, we will make the determination of how we want to proceed on that based in part on your feedback. And in the meantime, if there's a game you'd like to see us feature from the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo, the Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive, SNK, Neo-Geo, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, or PlayStation 2, leave it in the comments below or drop me a line on Instagram or Threads. Give me any game from those consoles that you want. And my name is Ron. It's been great to spend this WTF Wednesday with you. Be safe, be well, happy gaming, and we will see you on Sunday for Sucker Punch Sunday. Bye.